If you ask people to mention 3 names from boxing, they'd probably say Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn. As Rockefeller once said, every good deal ends up with both parties having a piece of bread in their mouths. I'm not going to tell you I'm the best in the world, but I'm in a group of 1.
What would you say is your proudest moment?
In life, having 2 wonderful children, managing to convince my wife to put up with me for 50 years. That's the best selling job I've ever done. Proudest moment would always be looking back and being retrospective about the job you've done, the legacy you leave. So I look at the world of snooker and say, in all modesty, I saved the sport. It was dying. Who
was your favourite boxer to manage and promote?
Well, it has to be Eubank, Chris Eubank. Obviously, we had nearly 20 world title defences. We came from nothing. The recession of the 80s, late 80s, nearly finished Matchroom. We were losing a lot of money. And then along came Sky in 1990, and along came Eubank. So God smiled on me, as he always does, you know, and I somehow got out of all the problems and produced a company that is now one of the global leaders in sport.
Absolutely, and with Chris's eccentricity, well-established personality, that must have made your job easier in terms of he could probably have put bums on seats himself, I guess.
Yeah, the great thing about Eubank is, I remember early doors, you have to remember in boxing, the fighters sell a lot of tickets. And you know, they get more appealing to promoters the more tickets they sell. But Eubank was having none of that. You know, I said to him, how many tickets do you want for his first fight? And he looked at me with disdain. I am the fighter. I'm the warrior, I don't sell tickets. You're the promoter, you sell the tickets. And it seemed to make sense. He never sold any tickets, but his image sold out venues. You know, whether you loved him or hated him, you were never going to ignore a Eubank fight. And he was just a wonderful promoter in his own right.
Who would you say is the best British prospect in boxing at the moment?
Probably Conor Benn, I would think. You know, the guy's got his dad's DNA, although they're quite dissimilar type of people. Nigel we promoted quite a few times and it was very successful. Conor seems to have the ability to take people out with one punch, like his dad did. But I think he might end up being a better boxer than his dad. But he's going to be box office, he's got charisma, he's got style, and you need that. Fighting is not just about being the best fighter, it's about being the most famous fighter. And sometimes the two don't go hand in hand.
Who is the GOAT of boxing, in your opinion, the greatest of all time?
I mean, everyone has to say Muhammad Ali, don't they? I mean, a man that changed boxing, changed lots of things in life as well as boxing. But if you go back through the ages, of course, you know, you're back talking about Jack Dempsey, you know, you're talking about so many great fighters in the 50s, 40s, 30s, go back to Johnson. I mean, it's tough, but for actually someone who became not just the #1 boxer, but the #1 face of sport globally, it has to go to Muhammad Ali.
Absolutely. Are there any fighters that you didn't get a chance to promote that you wish you had?
Oh, loads. I'm a fight fan. You know, I look at kids that are great fighters, and sometimes I had an occasional relationship with, you know. People sometimes are ridiculously managed by someone else or promoted by someone else. I don't know what they're thinking, because any fighter really wants to be here, wants to be with the best promotional outfit in the world. But you look at it in terms of UK audience, I only did one Joe Calzaghe fight, and Calzaghe was a great fighter. You know, you look at, I never did a Ricky Hatton fight, and Ricky was my type of fighter, you know, all action, come forward, big fan base. So there's always going to be one or two that slip through the net. Some of them slipped through and came back again. Nazim Hamed, I started with Naz and I finished with Naz. But the bit in the middle, he was with a couple of other promoters. So you can't, boxing is such a sport, you can't dominate or own in the same way as you can own snooker, you can own darts. Boxing is talent-led. I mean, the dream for me, frankly, would have been to have the same relation with Mike Tyson that he had with Cus D'Amato not from a training point of view, but from a friendship point of view. I mean, I'm very lucky to have a great relationship with Anthony Joshua, not just as a boxer, but as a man. And I like that. And I think Tyson could have added so much more to his legacy. I mean, he's making a good comeback now, to be fair. But there was a period where he was a child lost in a man's world, and he could have done with that, an arm round him. And that's probably one of my strong points. I can help and advise some of these kids.
Is there a dream, if I asked you to name a dream fight that you could commission, you know, with fighters past or present, what would it be?
Easy. Eubank Ben 3. Eubank Ben 1 was the greatest fight I've seen, 1990. Eubank Ben 2 was a controversial draw. Whether you're talking about just watching a great fight or creating a wonderful commercial opportunity, Eubank Ben 3 to launch pay-per-view in this country would have been the biggest fight of all time.
How do you assess the work that Eddie has done in kind of continuing the legacy that you've created?
Well, first off, I have to say I think he's a lot better than me, you know, which is nice for a dad to say that about his son. I'm not taking the mick. I mean, the kid's had a troubled upbringing, hasn't he? You know, being my son, he's got an act to follow, he's in the shadow, he's got a silver spoon kid reputation. How do you actually differentiate? And he's done that by hard work and by being creative. And I think really being so creative on social media, you know, he's following sell shows out. I mean, if you looked at the boxing scene today, certainly in the UK and maybe in the world, if you ask people to mention 3 names from boxing, they'd probably say Tyson Fury, Anthony Joshua, Eddie Hearn. So to be in that 3, now in America they'd say Canelo Alvarez and a couple of others, but Eddie would be in top 5 or 6. That's an amazing amount of notoriety achieved in a 10-year span. So Eddie's not bigger than boxing, but he's as big as boxing and he's as influential. He actually has more power within the sport than I ever had because of his few million people social media following, where when he speaks, he has a platform that can actually affect a whole sport on his own. No other promoter in boxing has really had that. And I don't think, at the moment, I don't see anyone who will have it in the future.
He's generous, like yourself, with time for media as well. And
well, I think it's just
that's a big part of it, yeah.
It's professionalism. It's at the end of the day, if we don't recognise the role that people like you play, then we're missing a trick. You know, let's be cynical about it. Let's just say we hate doing it, which we don't, because both him and I would talk for England, you know?
Yeah.
And we love talking about chosen subjects. Boxing is very close to
but
our heart.
But you don't owe me anything, do you?
No, I don't owe anybody anything. And I only do what I want to do. But at the same time, you're a platform as well for me. So I think this is a relationship where it works for you and it works for me. And as Rockefeller once said, every good deal ends up with both parties having a piece of bread in their mouths.
I can't disagree with that. You mentioned social media there in how it's shaped Eddie's growth as a promoter and the fighters that he manages. What do you make of this new era of social media stars getting involved in boxing? Like
it's inevitable because, you see, the biggest thing about the traditionalists, of course, will hate it. And I was a traditionalist. I was a traditionalist amongst women boxing. I was a traditionalist among social media stars boxing. But I've matured by listening to young people and understanding, don't live in the past. You live for today and you live for the future, and you have to try and map out the future. Where Eddie has moved faster than anybody else in boxing, into social media, into women's boxing, into the new social media applications, that has given him a massive advantage amongst other promoters. It's just common sense. It's just smart thinking. Now, for me, it took a little bit longer because it wasn't how I was brought up within sport. But that doesn't make it right. So on any boxing show, there's probably 500 people in the room that what I would call a traditional, go-anywhere boxing fans. 95% are people that say, what should we do this weekend? Or what should we do next month? Or oh, I see such and such is fighting. Let's go there instead of going to the cinema, instead of going to a nightclub, instead of going to a restaurant. So there's a big difference, but the future is attracting the 95% of casuals. And to do that, you have to prepare shows and promote shows that give those people a reason to buy a ticket or tune in. So you mustn't just do it from a traditional standpoint. You've got to do it as a, you've got to know your market. You've got to know your target market.
So what's the secret then in getting those 95% of people who would be going to a nightclub or going to a restaurant or the cinema instead? What's the secret to getting them on board to a boxing show?
Make sure you're not a secret yourself. If you've got something good, if you're good yourself at doing something, or if you're promoting something that you think is going to give people value for money and entertain them, make sure you have the ability to put that message out to your target market. It comes into common sense marketing. And whether it's social media, in my days it might have been sticking a poster up underneath the arches at Shoreditch Town Hall. And someone else would stick their poster on top, and then you'd put another poster on top of theirs. That's yesterday, of course, but it was still the same principle of letting your target market know what's on the menu for their pleasure.
Career highlight and biggest career regret?
The first highlight is without doubt Steve Davis winning the World Snooker Championships in 1981. Steve was my first real discovery. He walked in off the streets of Romford to play in a little competition that I was promoting. So it shows you that promotion can work. He changed the sport and he changed my life. And other people have subsequently added to that pleasure. There should be no barriers to entry to sport because it adds so much to the character of a country. So for me, the Steve Davis era was my starting point that changed my life forever. And regrets, question two, is I don't have any. And the reason is, what is the point? Do you want me to be old and cynical like so many other people in this game? It's not going to happen. I'm going to smile every day. I'm going to enjoy every hour, every moment. Something went wrong in the past? I'm sure it did. I've had it erased from my mind. I do my own therapy. And you know what? I never have a bad day because I don't allow myself to have a bad day. So I keep a positive frame of mind. I value myself. I have an over high opinion of myself. I'm not going to tell you I'm the best in the world, but I'm in a group of one. I don't have any regrets at all.